Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. This is David Corey, and I'm here with my colleague Kim Cairns, and we're here to talk about optimism. And I'm very optimistic that we're going to have a good session today, and we'll just talk about optimism. What is it? Why is it important? And talk a little bit about some of the implications of optimism. First of all, what is it? Well, very interestingly, Viktor Frankl wrote in Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl wrote, everything can be taken away from a person except one thing, and that is the ability to choose. The ability to choose one's way, to choose one's attitude. And really, the fact that Viktor Frankl said this after his experiences in a prison concentration camp, it's really quite remarkable that you can have the choice on how you view your situation, your circumstances in as bad a place as a concentration camp. Means that certainly we can, in whatever other situation or circumstances we find ourselves in, choose how we view our situation, our circumstance. So optimism is the choice to focus on what's good. So that's my my sort of informal definition of optimism, and of course you'll find lots of other definitions of optimism. But it's all about choice, don't you think, Kim?
Yes, I believe it's about choice, Dave. I also believe that it's about optimism is grounded in facing challenges in our lives. And working through those. Challenges will always be a part of our lives, daunting circumstances, and it's about working our way through those, and that's how we end up generating a sense of optimism. Because as we're working through those challenges, we're developing skills that truly will be of use at some future date with some other challenge that I don't even know about yet. So it's about recognizing that I've faced challenges before in life, and I will continue to do so, and that I bring skill sets to those challenges. And that's where that real bedrock of optimism comes from, I believe.
Absolutely, and there's so many connections with so many of our EQ competencies. There's a wonderful TED talk on optimism from a woman who talks about optimism as our part of our hardwiring. If we don't believe that we're going to be successful, then we're not even going to try something. So there is that idea of our brains hardwired for optimism, that we actually believe at some level that everything we do is going to turn out the way that we hope it to, or why would we even attempt it? This humorously came to light when Kim and I did a workshop on problem solving. We had a number of stations set up around the training room, and it was so interesting to hear people's reaction to these problem solving activities. Some people said, "Oh, I love these," and some people said, "Oh, I hate these things. These make me so frustrated." So here's a group of people, some of whom are viewing this activity in a very optimistic way. That is, that knowing full well and choosing to focus on the fact that these problems are solvable. That every one of the problems has a solution to it, and it's just a matter of giving it a try and seeing if you can come up with the solution. And other people choosing to view that as a frustrating experience and an unpleasant experience. And so, this is one way that how we choose to view a situation affects our problem-solving ability. And then, of course, we can bring in our self-awareness. And are we aware enough to know that that's what is contributing to our abilities to solve a problem, or our limitations to solving a problem? And wasn't that an interesting workshop, Kim, watching those people and watching the ones who hated that activity sit by and watch the ones who really liked the activity?
Well, and I think it also speaks to people's self-talk. It's interesting watching in those kind of activities. You can see the looks sweep across people's faces of, I've never been good at these things. I don't like doing it. And and so already that self-talk is going in a direction of I'm not going to engage in this process. I'm not going to look at this as a new experience. I'm not going to look at it as a positive challenge, as an opportunity to work my way through something. So, and I think on the flip side, you take a look at the people that get excited about that, and often in our culture, it's viewed as being Pollyannish or looking through life in rose-colored glasses if you're an optimist. And really, true optimism is just knowing that a lot of things are going to happen, and I can take a number of different perspectives and being able to step into those different perspectives rather than I've never been good at this. I don't like doing this. There's no energy behind those statements at all. So it's about paying attention to that self-talk. What's that yappy little voice in my head saying? And do I want to be receiving that information at this point? Or should I just say gently, take a seat, and I'm going to move forward this in a different way than I usually do?
Well, you've just brought in another competency, Kim. That's self-regard. How do we regard ourselves as competent and confident individuals, or do we view ourselves as not good at these things and frustrated by them? And there is such a thing as a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so, this is the case with optimism. We hear some interesting things from the managers that we work with. One of which is, I'm neither an optimist nor a pessimist. I'm a realist. And when I hear that, it's I get where they're coming from. They don't want to appear Pollyannish. However, realism, or being realistic and focusing on what's real, what's practical, that's not very inspiring. I'm not going to excite a group of people by focusing on the risks or the logistics alone. I need to begin focusing on the benefits. What are the great things about this project? What are the wonderful outcomes? The things we're going to realize that are going to be really great for our organization, and that's what gets people excited. That's what engages people in the process. And so, I say to people, you may be a realist. However, realists are seldom very inspiring. And that's a critical part of leadership. We have to be able to get excited about projects. I just think that that's such an important piece for leaders, and they often miss that, don't you think, Kim?
Well, yeah, Dave, and I think, again, it's a great opportunity to say reality testing is a strong part of being an optimist and being able to look at a situation fully, right? So it's not about just shelving any notion of reality testing. It plays a strong role in that. I want to be excited about the project, and I want to be able to clearly identify what the obstacles are going to be, and then set that out as this is an exciting challenge for all of us to work our way through this and to take a look at this from, again, a different perspective. So we're not eliminating reality testing when we're optimistic. They go hand in hand. They both move forward at the same time.
Correct again, Kim. Optimism is often viewed as a trait by psychologists, and I just don't get that. If a trait is a fairly stable characteristic of an individual, then what that means is that we are either born optimistic or pessimistic, and I just don't buy that. I just think that there's far too many life influences that we can point to that determine our outlook. And so, you look at people who come from some backgrounds of neglect, perhaps abandonment or abuse in early childhood, and you can understand perhaps a more pessimistic view or having less optimism about the way things are going to turn out for you. However, I think that that you can work on that view to some extent, and Martin Seligman wrote his book, Learned Optimism, all about how one can become more optimistic by understanding more about the factors that go into how we view our situations and circumstances, by understanding more about the influences that cause us to see the world the way that we see it. We can begin to make a shift towards a more positive and more supportive worldview that's going to help us to be more successful in all of our activities. Kim, do you recall coaching anyone that really struggled with optimism? Can you speak to perhaps how you address that situation?
Well, I think it ends up coming up in a lot of coaching conversations, actually, and people feeling like they're in situations where the same things unfold no matter what I do. It doesn't matter. This isn't going to make any difference. That kind of talking with regard to some aspect of their work or their life. And again, I think what that does is just create an opportunity to explore that a bit further, because there's that notion of as Seligman talks about, that notion of permanence. It's always like this. This is the way it plays out. I can't do anything about it. And there's that personalization of it, too. This always happens to me. And so it's just about having a conversation around, is that really the case? Is that really the truth? Are you speaking truthfully to yourself in that situation? Always? Or would you like to temper that a bit?
Seligman also talks about the
injecting some humor into that approach to life, too.
Absolutely, and Seligman also talks about the conspiratorial idea that somehow the world and people are conspiring to throw these barriers down into our pathway, and of course, using humor, you can really look at that and examine that belief and deconstruct it, because of course there is no conspiracy. There's only the actions that we take and the outcomes that we experience. So we've got the Q&A function turned on. So if you have questions for us about optimism, please feel free to send those in. We're happy to take those questions as they come in. And by all means, if you have any questions at any time, please feel free to email either Kim or myself. And it's simply David or Kim at eitrainingcompany.com, the URL that you see underneath our names there. So what else can we tell folks about optimism, Kim? What are some of the perhaps some of the challenges in working with a manager around optimism?
Well, I think this is an ideal time with regard to optimism to actually take a look in the past for people. Because people that are truly not feeling any sense of optimism, I think it's important to explore some challenges that they have faced in life and how they ended up working through those, and what did they learn along the way. I think sometimes, we tend to lose touch with those aspects of ourselves that have played a key role in working through a challenging situation. So I think it can be of value to take a look at some challenges that have been faced and actually get really clear about what those skills are that I developed in that situation. So I think that can be a valuable exercise, because it's a reawakening of, oh yeah, I'm not coming into this empty-handed. I'm not coming in this subject to the conspiracy, subject to the world around me. I actually have quite a variety of skills to deal with this situation.
Okay, so here's a question, Kim. The question is, okay, so I'm afraid if I improve my optimism, people will think it's fake. What would you say to a manager in that situation, Kim?
Well, I think, here's my take on that. None of us are going to emerge with a totally different personality this afternoon or tomorrow. I'm not going to leap out of a phone booth in a cape with a totally different personality tomorrow. But as I make behavioral change, it's slow incremental steps. And I think what's behind not appearing fake is being very authentic, which is going to mean being able to describe that situation a bit more. So if I'm presenting an optimistic perspective for the first time in a long time, perhaps, to be able to just say, this is how I'm feeling about it. This is why I'm feeling that way, and here's what I'm willing to do at this point. This is what I'm going to bring to this situation at this point. So painting a bit of a fuller picture for those around me So they get a real true sense of what I'm doing, and that it is coming from an authentic place inside, not some new skill that I've decided to throw out at them.
I totally agree with the personality transformation or the personality transplant idea. We don't do personality transplants. We simply make suggestions for people to make incremental changes that are going to improve their situation. And so, with respect to optimism, someone could simply add a couple of questions every time they discuss a project or a scenario or a situation, and they can say, okay. So what's good about this? What is the opportunity here? And how could we make something that appears on the face of it that appears not good for us? How can we spin this? How can we make this look good? What is good about this? And simply just say, perhaps I'd like to take a different look at this, a different perspective on this, and turn to a more positive perspective. And really, that's what optimism is: choosing to focus on what's good. And so you can choose to awfulize. I don't know if that's a word. Kim, is awfulize a word? But you know,
I like it.
it's what people do who struggle with optimism. They can awfulize and really find what is awful about a situation or an incident. And so you know, turn that around. What is the opportunity here? What is the outcome that is good here in this situation, and focus on that. You know, we do this little exercise in our workshops with respect to optimism, which comes from Benjamin Zander. And the wonderful book that he wrote with his wife, I believe her name is Rosamund, and this book is called The Art of Possibility. And if you haven't read it, I mean, it's got some wonderful sayings. One of which is, in the board game of life, be the board. So he's suggesting that we not be the little pieces that move around the board, but in fact we be the board, and create our own path, which is a wonderful image. However, one of the things that he suggests that we do to try to interrupt this automatic response that is going to give us a moment's pause in order to choose a more optimistic way of viewing a situation is to say, how fascinating. And as I understand it, he gets groups of people to stand up and put their hands out to their sides and say, how fascinating, in a very enthusiastic way, when something happens that is beyond our control. And so something terrible happens, it's out of our control. Our previous or past way of responding or reacting to such a situation might be something like saying some bad word, or slamming something down, getting angry, feeling frustrated. The suggestion is to say, how fascinating, because really this is something that is beyond our control. We didn't cause it. We were not involved in its occurrence. And so really, what choices are we left with in those situations? Again, we can have our first response, and we can have a bit of a flare up of anger, but the how fascinating can almost interfere with that process of having the flare up. Okay, so for example, my car has a flat tire. Or a puncture, as they say in other places. So what are my choices here? Well, I can get angry, but who am I angry with? Am I angry with the tire for being flat? Am I angry with the nail that I ran over? Am I angry with myself for driving over a nail? So a number of ways of looking at this situation. But this how fascinating gives us that pause and drives a wedge between stimulus and response. And then, Kim, what are our choices from there?
Well, I think what that ends up doing is when we're taking a look at it from a different perspective. I mean, I think it's so important to step outside of ourselves at times in those stressful situations. And I can actually say that to myself. Okay, just take a look at this from the outside. This situation, you're starting to get wound. I'm starting to get wound up about something. So step out and take a look at that. How well is that going to work for that person that you're now looking at? One thought comes to my mind around optimism is we had a long flight from London to Johannesburg last year, and due to my own negligence, did not get online to reserve a seat, so ended up in a middle seat. And as I'm getting on the plane, I'm thinking, oh, I'm in the middle seat. This is going to be miserable. It's going to be a miserable flight. It's 10 hours long. Get into the seat, and the gentleman next to me on the aisle almost immediately falls asleep, and I think I just feel trapped here. And then what kicked in for me was, okay, how am I going to make the best of this situation? I could sit here and have this revolving through my head for the next 10 hours, and that's not going to get me anywhere. So I just laughed at myself. I said, well, you got really long legs, and you're still somewhat flexible. So let's see if you can actually climb over this guy to get out into the aisle without waking him up. So I just turned it into a bit of a challenge for myself to be able to do that. And I'm kind of giggling as I'm doing it. I got into the aisle, didn't wake him up, didn't touch him, climbed back over him when I came back in. And I did that another couple of times on the flight. And it was like turning it into a bit of an adventure rather than a trial. So it's just about that perspective shift from viewing it as a trial or something to be endured painfully, or something that you can have a bit of fun with.
I just want to touch on this idea of attitude for a moment. You know, that attitude is, good attitude is one of those things that comes out on the top of those surveys when they ask employers what they're looking for in a candidate for employment. Good attitude is something that, you know, that we're always wanting in the people that we hang around with. We want to be around people who have a good attitude, a positive outlook. And some of these little things that we're talking about, some of these little tricks and tips, when you start making these a habit, then what people perceive is someone with a good attitude. And so, you know, when we ask groups of people to describe a good attitude, they say optimism comes up. They say someone who is optimistic. Well, it's more than that. It's taking an optimistic approach to life. And if we can see that, and there's some wonderful old sayings around attitude. Hire for attitude, train for skill. Employers know, recruiters know that they want someone who views the possible, not the impossible. Which reminds me of the work of Carol Dweck around open and closed mindsets, and this idea that we can come into situations with wondering what the possibilities are, or we can come into situations just like the problem solvers and saying, I really hate these things, this is not going to go well. And of course, it doesn't go well, surprise, surprise. So attitude is making a habit of optimism. It's bringing optimism into the way that we approach life. And it's getting up in the morning and wondering what the possibilities for that particular day might be. What are the opportunities that are going to come our way? And not getting bogged down in the pessimism and the cynicism that prevents us from taking enthusiastic action towards our goals. So, Kim, we got about a couple of minutes left. What sort of final thoughts would you like to leave folks with respect to optimism?
Well, again, I think, you know, and you've touched on this a couple of times, Dave, but I think it is so important to be authentic in this new approach. Explore it, you know, get a feel for how comfortable it's going to be to operate in a different way, and be able to articulate what's going on. And I think it's so important to identify, I'm making a conscious decision here to look at things from a different perspective. It's important for me to announce that internally. It's also important for me to announce that externally, that this is my plan. And I think it's also a great opportunity then to engage some other people in the process. I'm going to be working on my optimism. So it means I'm going to be trying some different things out, and I would really appreciate hearing from you folks how that's landing. Is that working, or what could I possibly do differently? Another approach would be to pick somebody out that is optimistic, that presents as optimistic. Have some dialogue with that person. How do they end up being that way? If it's so foreign to me, it's a great opportunity to inquire about how that works for them. How do they summon that up in those situations that would drive me crazy from a pessimistic point of view?
Right. Yeah, and just think the next time that you're in a situation that doesn't feel great to you, or is it doesn't seem to have a good outcome, what is the opportunity there? What are the possibilities there? And we meet these people all the time, and they teach us about making the best of those opportunities. You know, where you're standing in a long lineup or a long queue somewhere for something, and why not turn to the person next to you and strike up a conversation? Yeah, you know, the people that do that, they are seizing the opportunity and viewing their circumstances in a positive way, or the you know, turning to that person next to you on the airplane, or on the bus, or wherever you happen to be, and striking up a conversation. These are optimistic people. And really interesting is that Martin Seligman decided to write his book because, as a lifelong pessimist, he called himself, he wondered whether it was possible to learn to be an optimist. And as a pessimist, he noticed some things about optimists, that optimists seem to have more fun, and wondered what that would be like. To be one of those people. And really it was his young daughter who prompted him by saying, "Daddy, why are you so grumpy all the time?" And he thought to himself, well, that's not a legacy I want to leave for my daughter. I really want to not have that kind of effect on her. And so a challenge for you is, are you someone who's grumpy all the time? And is there a way that you can view your circumstances in a more positive way? And to be sure, and I certainly don't want to take anything away from really traumatic or really dire circumstances. I mean, you know, people are being abused, people are being bullied, people have chronic you know, terminal illnesses. I'm not certainly not saying that you need to be Pollyannish about those situations or circumstances. But you know, the people that really do the best in those circumstances are the people who do find the opportunities to learn about themselves, the opportunities to perhaps engage in some sort of counseling program, or be with other survivors, to connect with them and build relationships with them, and share the difficulty of those burdens. So you know, I'm not saying we have to go around smiling insanely all the time. That's not optimism. Optimism is simply, what is the opportunity here? What can I get out of this? What's good in a situation over which I have no control? And again, trying to think about the people around you, the people that love you, the people that care about you, and how you impact them. And certainly as a leader, we need to absolutely think about the people that report to us and how we impact and affect those people with our worldview, and how we see the world. Okay, so we just have one more minute, so thanks for joining us. I'm David Corey at the Emotional Intelligence Training Company, along with my colleague Kim Cairns, coming to us from beautiful Victoria, British Columbia. I happen to be in Calgary, Alberta at this moment, and we are here to answer any of your questions at any time, discuss with you how you can improve your emotional intelligence skills. Join us online. We've got a LinkedIn group and many other services that you can take advantage of for free. Ask us about those, and then of course course, what we do in a professional capacity is the design of customized learning solutions related to emotional intelligence and leadership development and one-to-one coaching. So goodbye from me, David Corey, and goodbye from Kim Cairns. Go, Kim.
Thanks very much for joining us today, folks. I look forward to chatting with all of you in the future. Thanks.
All right, bye for now, everyone. Take care.